eating well to nourish mental well-being. And I want to suggest that our mental physical needs quite a lot of nourishment. We live in a very unhealthy world, and we're up against a lot of difficulty and stress. So most of us lack love. So my definition of illness, ILL, is I lack love. And I find that people who have so-called mental health issues very often didn't get the love they need. They didn't get the food they need. They didn't get the support they need. And they didn't get the acknowledgement and really validation of who they are as wonderful, beautiful people. So this presentation is educational only. It's not intended to take the place or advice of your doctor or be meant to diagnose or treat illness. And as Chris said, I'm the director of Bauman Wellness, and I co-founded Home Comfort Restaurant, which is a health food restaurant in 1973. So I've been on this path for 50 years, and also started the Berkeley Holistic Health Center, Bowman College, NANP, which is a professional organization, Sonoma West Integrative Health Institute, which was an effort to bring health and medicine together at a hospital. Author of 9 books, Culinary Wellness and Integrative Wellness, and I design, mentor community programs in affordable nutrition, ways to be well, brighten up, kids cooking, spice for life through Bauman Wellness. So today, our learning objectives is to really understand the Bauman food mood recovery operating system. And I think an operating system is our lifestyle. We often use the word lifestyle, but operating is really how do you organize? How do you prepare? How do you execute? How efficient, how organized, how mindful, skillful are you? And I will share some ideas on how to up-level your operating system. And many, if not all of us, are in recovery from this crazy world that we're living in. Learn how to eat well, and that's sort of a trademark, eat well, and how it improves mood. And I'm using mood as a catch-all for mental health issues because I don't want to get medical. I want to really look at how to improve well-being and learn how to apply eat well approach and meal plan. So as Chris said, it's practical. It's not just theoretical, and how to share eat well with friends, family, and community. It's very important. We don't live alone in this world. We live in systems, and some of our systems are broken and dysfunctional. And if you look at it, in those systems, the food is really not very good. People are not eating well in a dysfunctional system. So eat well is not for pleasure. Most of us eat for pleasure or self-medication. Oh, I don't feel good. I'm lonely, hungry, tired, angry, discouraged. Might as well eat a cookie. So eating poorly feeds stress. And we know that stress and diet go back and forth. Eating well alleviates stress. Eating poorly adds stress. It also adds toxicity and dis-ease. And I use that term dis-ease as discomfort. So I think that's kind of interesting that our goal is to be at ease. And then this approach is foundational. It's not prescriptive. Very important. You see lots of literature around do this for that. Take this food, take this herb, take this supplement, take this medication, do this therapy to deal with mental health issues and or physical health issues. And we really don't see enough foundational support for eating well. And you can choose delightful food to support repair, recovery, and rejuvenation. So the choice element is always there. And sometimes you have limited choices or limited budget, or you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and maybe you don't eat, you just have a cup of tea. But by well in this context, I'm saying the W stands for whole, and a whole food is a simple primary food. It's not a second generation food where it's been slightly processed, or a third generation food where it's been even more processed, or fourth generation where it doesn't even have any familiarity with the source of nature from which it came. So whole food's a natural food. It's a chicken, it's a carrot, it's a peach, it's just a food, simple food. And then it's earthy. Did that food come from the earth? It's very important. The plants support life on this planet. The more plant food we eat, the more in touch we are with the earth, with the nutrients, the minerals, the vitamins, the organisms in the earth. And that's very grounding. And people with mental health problems often are not grounded. Often they're traumatized, they fly out of body, they're distracted, discouraged, reactive, triggered. And by eating whole earthy food or being in the garden, being on the earth, is very supportive and balancing. And then local is the food that's grown locally has less chance of being irradiated, less chance of having heavy sprays. If you go to your farmer's market or your local farm store and say, is this organic? And they say yes or no. And some natural food is not organic because of the cost of organic certification, but it's grown locally, it's fresh, it was picked recently, and we're also supporting local economy and local ecology by growing food wherever we are. And then the second L is really vital, is love. And love, as we all know, we can all agree on, is what really nourishes us at the soul level. And we love to eat. And I ask people, why did you eat that donut? They go, oh, I just love it. And I go, well, okay, I could see why you could love a donut, but you could love something else that was more whole, earthy, and local and still get that same sense of love. People often eat because they lack love. Eating is a substitute gratification. So the missing link in mental health recovery is to receive daily nourishment. I want to make sure you get that word daily. It's like exercise. Oh, I exercise twice a week. No, we need to move joyfully every day. We need to eat well, or we want to eat well every day. And we want this nourishment from whole, healthy, local, loving foods to cool inflammation. By now, we've all heard that inflammation is part of most, if not all, disease process. It's irritation, it's aggravation, it's pain, it's suffering. And we can cool inflammation with eating well. And the next step, and again, we're not just treating mental health as a disease, we're looking at imbalances in the gut, in the nerves, in the brain, in the immune system, in the nervous system, all of these things. So if we can cool inflammation and support a diverse gut microbiome, we're doing very nicely. And we're addressing nutrient insufficiencies. Now, there is such a thing as the recommended daily intake, but it's a minimal dose for people who are struggling. For people who have gone through toxicity and trauma, they need much more nutritional support than they're getting from eating average food, supermarket food, restaurant food. People who come to see me who are not well, and they go, well, I eat pretty well, Dr. B. And I look at it and I go, yeah, you have calories and you have some nutrients, but they're not sufficient to help you overcome the depletion from the difficulty, the hardship, the challenge, the stress that you've had over decades. It's a big deal. So we really have to improve the nutrient supply and the digestibility for people to become whole, healed, and recovered. And then finally, to alleviate loneliness. Loneliness is the pandemic of pandemics. People feeling disconnected, feeling estranged, feeling despair. 75% of adults report depression, anxiety, and insomnia to their doctor, and they're given medication to treat it. They're not given a best friend. They're not given the Bauman Wellness community. They're not given encouragement to eat whole foods. So we really need to restore family. Typically, the family of origin has not worked out all that well. There's people who are upset with one another, people who have basically given up on each other. So we need to look at ways to alleviate loneliness and build connectivity through the earth and through social experiences. So how about that inflammation? Inflammation is going on when there's an infection. So all of us have probably experienced COVID or the vaccine, and that creates upregulated inflammation. And we experience inflammation when we have cardiovascular disease, or back and forth. Cardiovascular disease increases inflammation. And we see a connection between diet and insulin resistance, which is blood sugar control, and obesity. So that's another talk for another day about how eating refined foods alters our metabolism, alters our weight gain and energy. And then when we've had injury or we're inflamed, we're more prone to injury. And I'm a sports fan, and I see a lot of the sports players getting inflamed and losing production because they don't have the nutritional strength, not to mention the stress they're under. Inflammation is connected to Alzheimer's, smoking, and exercise. And you go, exercise. Well, the right kind of exercise is soothing, and over-exercising is inflamed. And if you look at that graphic, that's a picture of a brain on fire. So what we see with mental health issues is both the gut, the brain, the nerves, the tissues, the organs are on fire. They're literally aggravated and they're decomposing. So let's look at inflammatory foods. And you know these. Everyone I come across seems to have some idea of what's inflammatory. So number one is sugar. And of the sugars, the worst is the high fructose corn syrup. And then what commercial industry has done is it said, well, let's have artificial sweeteners. Let's have no sugar. Let's have aspartame, equal, other things. Well, those are pro-inflammatory. And cooking oils, oil doesn't like heat. So when we cook a vegetable oil, it degrades and it creates an inflammatory condition. And then there's trans fats, which are hardened vegetable oils, also known as margarine. And then there's commercial dairy products, and that's interesting. There are quite a few nutritionists who say avoid dairy products. And my suggestion is the problem is not with the animal, it's not with the cow, it's with the humans and what they're feeding the cow and the hormones, antibiotics, and genetically modified food, corn and soy, that they're giving to cows, which affect the dairy and the meat. So commercial, it's mass production, it's pro-inflammatory. And then white flour, refined pastry products. Well, those are good. Those are cookies and cakes and pasta and pastries and bagels and breads. And even whole grain flour tends to be pro-inflammatory, particularly if it's gluten. Gluten-free flour is a bit less inflammatory, but if it's highly refined, it still can lead to some type of inflammation. Excess alcohol and caffeine. Well, how much is too much? Good question. 1 or 2 servings a day is considered okay for most people. But when I see people, I say, why don't you have much less? Why don't you cut in half your alcohol, your caffeine, your sugar, your bad fats, just as a starter, the 50% rule, And people go, okay, I can do that. And then they feel better if they replace it with more whole, healthy foods. And then this one can be a little tough for people, is browned, grilled meats and fried food. So people like to get their grill out and like to blacken their chicken or whatever else they're eating. But that type of hydrocarbon is pro-inflammatory. And then we get the whole array of commercial meat, poultry, eggs, and deli meats. Not because the poultry, the egg, or the meat itself is intrinsically inflammatory, but because of the way it's treated, the way the animal's treated, the way the food is treated. So for people who are looking to improve their health, mental, physical, emotional, I say pick one of these categories or one or two and start looking at ways to alter it. One meal can create hours of inflammation. People get food hangovers. A single fast food style meal can increase serum interleukin-6 by 100%, and that's an inflammatory marker, peaking at 6 hours after the meal. That's very interesting. If you decide to have a fast food lunch, dinner, breakfast, snack, you go, oh, that was great. I feel pretty darn good. But you have a poor sleep and you wake up somewhat tired and wired and irritated the next day. Sample meals in this clinical study were bread, butter, cheese, and milkshake. Well, that's pretty simple kid food. Eggs, muffins, butter, and a sugar drink. Again, kid food. Sugar, heavy cream, chocolate, powdered milk. Kid food. Bagel, cream cheese, potato, milk, juice. Kind of kid food. So I think there are people whose inner child is wounded. Oh, my child is so sad today. I will get happy by eating this refined, happy food. So here's my question to my esteemed audience. I call it the $1 billion question. Why do people consume inflaming foods? How about that word, inflaming? And there's even a word called inflammaging, which is inflammatory aging food, but inflaming food. How can we support them to eat well and give examples? So I'm going into gallery mode now, and I'd like to hear from some of us and see what you think. So just open up your screen, say your name. And again, this is a common phenomenon. People eat refined foods, inflaming food. Could be me, could be you, could be our relatives, our friends. Why do they eat it? And how behaviorally can we help them make a modification? Who's up? Raise your hand.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Nobody else is. So I think, in the US, the first thing would just be that it's our food culture, which is just based in highly processed food. And that's our environment.
Yeah.
And the other, big thing is convenience. And maybe the third would be access, right? So I think if you're trying to give examples about how to support people make some changes, the first thing would be to really recognize what is their circumstance and don't make suggestions that are out of their reach.
Right.
But maybe to start with one meal a week that they prepare for themselves at home.
Sounds like a nutritionist to me, or a health coach. Couple others. How do we help? How do we identify? How do we connect? How do we help people change? And why are people in this mode to begin with? Who else?
Hello, friends.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here.
Professor E.G. Yes.
Oh, Professor E.B. No, I was reflecting on why do we go after these substances that cause inflammation? The first thing that came to mind was I wasn't breastfed as a child. That's why I want ice cream. But what's an ice cream? That high fat, high sugar, a combination that really only exists in nature through mother's milk, one would say. And now there's an overabundance of that combination, high fat, high sugar. But it goes back to what you said, that craving love. So
That's
we're
correct. Bingo.
substituting these substances of love, so we feel loved. So we can trigger that early childhood response maybe we didn't get. You're
Correct.
like, oh, this ice cream feels like love. And then
Correct.
you crash, and then you're self-loathing, and
That's
then you have this
correct.
behavior of isolating, and on and on and on. So how can we get these qualities of love in nature that
Correct.
fulfill kind of that sweetness of life?
Yes, the divine
The
sweetness, we call it.
Yeah, there we go. So that was my reflection. I
Very
wasn't
nice.
I wasn't breastfed as a child, so I need ice cream.
Thank you. Good
You're
one.
welcome.
So I see, Corey, do you have a hand up?
No, but I will just add in, I would have said the same thing, so that's
Yes.
very good. I really relate to that. But I think that, as adults, we also get into these situations where the community that we're involved in, whether it's our family or
Yes.
our immediate local community, has a lot to do with how
Yes.
we're eating as well. And I know
Eating's a
that-
social activity.
Mhm.
So it just
And
so
for
happened I
many-
married my wife, and she and I eat well together.
Yes, and that's
And I married my wife, and she doesn't do some of the things most people do. So I don't do them either, and we don't do them together, and we create a household around healthy habits. And that's one of the reasons we're here,
Yeah.
But other
We're sort of-
people got caught in the middle, and I think we
Yeah,
all
you
understand
are
that.
what you, yeah.
I'll take one more. We could spend quite a bit of time on this, but there's good info. Yes, we do.
It's who you hang out with.
So I feel that the root cause can also be stress and fatigue.
Yes.
And that just means, again, because of the inflammatory overall conditions
Yes.
and insulin resistance and the kind of very hyper-stimulating, stressful culture that we're in, like
Absolutely.
I can feel my own stress response and needing comfort from food or
Yes.
from connection. And as you know, if you're with people and where you eat, and the need for connection will often make us eat at this particular place that doesn't suit how we actually need to eat.
Yes.
So yeah, I think more addressing a kind of a cultural loneliness, because
Yes.
America is a very
Yes.
lonely society.
Yes.
And I can say this from actually belonging to a culturally collectivist culture and uprooting and coming here, that
Yeah.
I feel the loneliness of this culture every single day.
I hear you.
Yeah. And I feel people have fallen down during the pandemic very hard and not recovered. Many have not recovered.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to the slides. I think this group has pretty much figured it out. It's just a matter of how to bring this forward. See if I can get my slides to move. Aha. So repeated research findings that more produce, better mood. Eating fruits and veg are associated with less psychological stress, better mood, greater happiness, and there's good data to support this.